Hey, I was wondering, any chance you could touch on a topic in an upcoming podcast? What people are calling old school methods, such as the Keeler method. Everyone deserves the right to educate on all kinds of dog training and make their own opinions and modifications. I was super disappointed. I went to search YouTube and Google for some sources on the method. Dave from The Art of Dog said everyone should read up on it. I know a little, but haven't read the book, etc. I was so disappointed. Everything that popped up was what not to do in dog training one-on-one and old school methods that will ruin your dog. Like, what the fuck? Old school is where everything stemmed from. Without it, we would never be as advanced as we are today. So I'm actually frustrated. I may have to order an actual book or visit the local library. Any chance you could talk about a few old school tracking methods, the pros and cons, and maybe examples of how they're applied? I can't be the only one, and some people, owners, trainers, likely don't even know what they don't know, and we all deserve to know. Okay, so let's talk about old school dog training.
We haven't even talked about that term, Keeler method, in like...
It's been a while.
100 episodes, probably.
I still want to buy the book and go over it at some point.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Maybe I'll do that when we get off. Okay, so old school methods, generally speaking, when people refer to old school methods, they are referring to the Keeler method of dog training.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'm going to get into this a little bit. I'll be the first to say, when you get into like all of the details of the Keeler method of dog training, like I don't know all of it. I know, the general concepts and stuff like that. But Keeler was like one of the first people that really like pioneered and put together a system of dog training. Yeah. Right? So it wasn't just like the like intuitive, you just kind of know the dog and like the Cesar Millan stuff. It wasn't like, the at the time, like the reward-based stuff wasn't super popular or anything like that. It was just a basic method of getting a dog to be submissive to you, compliant and obedient, right?
Yeah.
So what everybody liked about it was, again, the fact that it was a system. Right? It was a straightforward system that you could follow step by step with pretty much any dog, and the results are generally going to be pretty consistent. Now, when I say the results, I mean like the physical thing the dog is doing, right? The dog will learn how to sit. The dog will learn how to stay. The dog will learn how to come. The dog will learn how to walk nice on a leash, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where it kind of fell apart was that the whole system was completely and utterly centered around just forcing the dog to do stuff, right? Additionally, getting back to like not caring a whole lot about like the dog's state of mind and all of that kind of stuff, it generally was very heavy-handed as well.
Yeah, is this what they called the yank and crank?
Yank and crank method, old school method, all that kind of stuff. It's all the same shit. Now, there are a lot of Keeler diehards out there, like to this day, like guys that are like a little bit older, 50s, 60s, stuff like that, that are still following the Keeler method of dog training, right? They still do it with every single one of the dogs that they work with.
Yeah.
And I've seen online these guys have debates with people that say, hey, listen, it's not as harsh as you think, right? Yeah. Now, again, getting back to like, I've never taken a dog through the whole Keeler method of dog training, right? Like, I don't know that much about it past just like basic concepts and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I look at this the same way as like people that give you a hard time over just prong collar use and e-collar use in general, right? A lot of people think like because you're using a prong collar or because you're using an e-collar that it only ever is used at the absolute highest motivation possible, right? Which we know is not true. So if it's true in that context, we could take the methods, the Keeler methods, right? And we could arguably say if we have a very submissive dog, right? Or a little bit maybe of a nervous dog or a sensitive dog or things like that, that hypothetically you probably could work them through the Keeler method of dog training and get away with not needing to use a whole lot of pressure and then like working through it just fine, right? Yeah. I think people's issue with it stems less from the actual training, and I think it stems more from the state of mind of when people are people associate old school dog training with just not caring about the dog. right? They associate it with the dog has to be compliant to us at all costs. And that's where you get into some of the things that, the Keeler method of dog training or old school dog trainers. I'll talk more on just like old school dog trainers as opposed to that specific method because, again, I don't know all of the nuanced details of it and stuff like that. But old school dog training in general was very much of the mindset of like, if the dog does something wrong or the dog acts aggressively or this or that, even if it's something minor, it absolutely is punished to the most extreme, right? We're really getting on these dogs over this kind of stuff. And sometimes, with things that I might let slide, right? Or I might look at and be like, well, this is more of a socialization issue, or I would address this way, or maybe we've got to use a little counter conditioning here because the dog's not really making the mistake. They're just showing that they're uncomfortable. Those types of things, that mindset goes out the window, right? It's just this dog growled, right? Or this dog did this, or this dog did that, and we need to hammer it away, right? Additionally, where you get a lot of the flack on like the Keeler method of dog training is where you get into like some of their approaches with dealing with aggression and stuff like that. They had some pretty firm mentalities behind, things like a lot of dog trainers will talk about how people used to do like helicopters and stuff like that, where people would literally pick dogs up in the air with like a choke chain and like swing them around and stuff like that, and like do all sorts of terrible things that obviously like we have way better ways of correcting a dog than doing any of that kind of stuff at this point. They had a method that was like, I believe it was like a piece of hose with like a dowel rod in it that they would take and they would crack the dog over the snout with it if they did something wrong, right? There was a lot more harsh of methods surrounding a lot of this kind of stuff, right? And I think that's where, most of the dog training public at this point can look at all of that and be like, again, there's probably much better ways to handle these types of things than back in the day, right? So that's generally what it is right now. Now, where is it good, right? Where is it important? I think it's very important to understand how they took some of these dogs through the system as far as, the leash handling skills, the shaping of positions, all of that kind of stuff, because there is a lot of times that we've taken dogs that we've worked with that have zero food drive, right? They're not motivated by anything. We need to just get them into a compliant state of mind. And you could kind of lean back on some of those like old school methods of just leash handling skills, right?
Sure.
Teaching the dog the basics of leash pressure stuff, right? All of that, giving leash corrections for things, stuff like that, right? And you could make a lot of progress with some dogs early on in things. But it's just, things have evolved over time, right? Like back in the day, dog training was very rough, right? It was just the dog has to listen. The dog has to be respectful, and the dog's going to get in trouble if they're not listening and if they're not respectful, and that's it, right? And we've luckily moved in a direction where we could still look at dogs and say, this dog needs to listen to me, right? Like I'm a firm believer that if I've got a dog, right, the dog has to be compliant. If I have a dog that I don't have any control of, if I take it out in public, or if I have a dog that is just, there's things I cannot do with them because they don't let me do it, I think that's a big problem in dog ownership, right? But we could also look at, if I'm going to hold them to that standard, I'm going to make sure I provide a quality of life for them that is keeping their emotional well-being in mind, right? Getting back to like topics like socialization and building motivation and play and like all of those things that really just were like not on the radar with a lot of old school methods. We could put those things in the mix with it, and obviously, be much further along because of it.